Hello everybody. Today what I would like to do is continue from the last video on genetics and showing you what Mendel did to actually starting to show you a new tool called a Punnett Square. Punnett Squares are a tool that show you Punnett Squares are a tool that show you how to calculate the probability of having a certain offspring. So, in order to talk about that, we first need to talk about and have a quick review on alleles. In order to do a Punnett Square here, what I'd like to do is show you a, we will say capital T is tall. Now, this isn't going to work for humans. There's too many genes that affect tallness, but we will talk about Mendel's pea plants. Capital T is tall, and that is the dominant trait. That is the dominant allele. Little t is short, and it is the recessive allele. Allele is one letter, capital T, tall, dominant. Little t, short, recessive. When we put these together, now we can say homozygous dominant, big T, it's tall. We can say big T, heterozygous, it's still tall because it has a dominant allele. And then little t, homozygous recessive is short because that's the only way to have a recessive trait is to have both of them from each parent. So what we're going to do is we are going to cross two heterozygous parents. So what we do to do a Punnett square is, not surprisingly, we draw a square. And then, if we have two parents that are big T, little t, what we do is we put a big T here, we put a little t here. Because that parent, we keep saying this fraction over and over again, there is a 50-50 shot, a 1/2 shot of it donating a T or a little t. It's going to donate one or the other, but it's going to donate either 50% chance it's going to donate a big T, 50% chance it's going to donate a little t. Well, the other parent is going to do the same thing. So what we then do, in order to show what the child might be, we just simply move these letters down, we move these letters over. So I'm going to move this letter down and this letter over. Big T, big T. I'm going to move this letter over and this letter down. Big T, little t. I'm now going to move this letter down and this letter over. Big T, little t. And then I'm going to move this letter down and this letter over. Little t, little t. So, if we now look at the genotypes, what is the ratio? And ratios are simply numbers. What is the ratio of homozygous dominant to heterozygous to homozygous recessive? The ratio is 1 to 2 to 1. The phenotype, what do we actually see? The phenotype ratio of tall to short is 3 to 1. If we now want to start talking percentages or probability, because that's usually what we want to say, what's the probability that these two parents will have a tall child? It's 75% tall. What's the probability they will have a short child? It's 25% that they will have a short child. All of these are almost always in terms of 4. You notice those add up to 4. Those are 4. The percentages or the fractions are always in quarters. 1/4, 50%, 75%, 4 out of 4, 100%. It always looks similar to that. So now let's quickly try and look at another Punnett square. But now let's look at a human. But now this shows not complete dominance. This shows what's called codominance. There isn't one that dominates over another. But the 23rd pair of chromosomes, we said that there are 23 pairs in a human. The 23rd pair are called the sex chromosomes. And there are only 2 sex chromosomes. There's an X and there's Y. Well, if you are born XX, you are female. If you are born XY, you are male. So let's look at the probability of what a couple will have, because obviously in order to have a baby, we have to have a male and a female. So let's draw our Punnett square. It may not be pretty, but there's a Punnett square. And now let's put the X here and the Y here. Let's get these out of the way just so we're not confused. This is the male. We will put him here. We will put mom over here. Well, mom is either going to donate an X or an X. So we can move an X over here for all 4 boxes. She is donating an X, guaranteed. Dad is either going to donate an X to these 2 boxes, or he's going to donate a Y to these 2 boxes. So he donates an X to these 2, he donates a Y to these 2. So for that reason, our genotype ratio is 1:1. 1 boy for every girl, or 2 to 2, but we reduce. The phenotype ratio of what do we actually see, because we don't see the X's and the Y's, what we see is 1 boy for every girl. We see 1 XY for every XX. And that's why the human population, for the most part, is 50-50. Now, technically, if the data is to be believed, there are more boys born than girls. But more boys are killed in war, in violence. They don't live as long. So even though a higher percentage of boys are born, most of the human population is female. But I'm not talking a lot. We're talking like 49, 51%. But more boys are born by a little fraction. More girls are alive by a little fraction. So let's look at one last example. There are diseases, and we can do a Punnett square that shows both of them. Cystic fibrosis is a disease that affects people, that causes their lungs to harden and fill full of of gel, and they end up usually dying a very painful death. Fortunately, in modern society, there's really good treatment for that, and people don't die from it all the time now. Well, there's also another disease called sickle cell anemia, and it is passed on the same way. So we have 2 completely separate diseases, but we're going to show a Punnett square to show how that can actually happen. This parent, we will say, is a carrier. A, capital A, the dominant, is the normal OK gene. Little a is the recessive gene, and that's the one that will cause these diseases separately, 2 separate diseases. So let's say mom is a carrier. Well, let's say dad is a carrier as well, You may hear your parents, grandparents talk about somebody being a carrier for something. That just means they have the gene, but they don't have the disease. See, this dominant normal allele is canceling it out. It's dominating over it. So these two people don't have cystic fibrosis. Or these two people don't have sickle cell anemia. So let's say, what is their probability of having a child? Well, move the letters. Big A, big A. Big A, little a. Big A, little a. Uh-oh. Little a, little a. This is the child that would have this disease. So, if I want to know a probability, what's the chance that this couple will have a child with the disease? It's 1/4, or 25%. They could have one child, and that child could have it. It's just a bad roll of the dice. They have a 1 in 4 chance. But now let's look at somebody who has cystic fibrosis. Little a, little a. Let's say they cross with somebody that isn't even a carrier. They would have no chance of having a child that has this disease. None. Because every one of their children would be a carrier of it, but they won't ever have it. Now, funny, ironic, sad story. This disease is only passed along populations of primary European ancestry. What am I saying? I'm saying Caucasian. I'm saying white. This disease is primarily passed along through populations of African ancestry. What am I saying? I'm saying African American. I'm saying black. So, my wife and I, we don't have to worry about us or my son having sickle cell anemia. That's not even an option because we are not descended from Africa. Most of our ancestry came from Europe. But if you are African American, you have a possibility of passing this on. When my wife and I were pregnant for our son, we were asked, would you like your child to be tested for cystic fibrosis? We said no, because nobody in our family has ever had it, to our knowledge, and if even we are both carriers, there was only a 25%. Now, I know some students out there are probably listening to this going, wait a minute, I'm biracial. What does that mean for me? My mom is white and my dad is black. What does that mean for me? Well, good news mostly. First of all, because both parents aren't white and both parents aren't black, you can't get either one of these horrible diseases. However, if you were to also marry and have kids with somebody who is biracial, there's a very small chance that your child, but you would have to carry both of them, and your spouse would have to carry both of these diseases. But then there is an incredibly small chance your child could have both of them, or maybe one. But now the odds drop even farther, and is not worth, and would be a complicated Punnett square. I hope this helps. We're going to do Punnett squares in class and as homework, and I hope this helped.